Because I'm Carlos, episode number 33, and finally I missed it. I'm actually recording this on the early hours of Friday, June the 2nd, but I had originally mapped out this whole idea towards the end of May, and the thought process was, oh, let me make sure I get this recorded before the end of May so that I keep the one per month thing. And I just missed it by a couple of days. But you know what happens? I did say that this podcast format was going to happen when I had the right topic and the right situation. My goal was to have about one a month, and for the most part, I've been pretty good at it, but this is a situation where I missed this one. Although I think this month I may have a couple of different topics I may be able to touch on, hopefully. And if that's the case, then that'll be kind of a fun way to make sure that a little bonus as far as that's concerned. You'll get a little more than what the usual is. Now, with all that said, there was a specific topic that I did want to talk about on this one, and it's just kind of looking at where things sit right now. So right now in June 2023, the beginning of it, looking forward to seeing what the rest of the summer looks like into the fall. The fall is always a little bit easy for me because as things start to turn over, then when we get into the fall expo time and planning for that, and I've got plenty of time to get there, but I've got some stuff that I want to work on during the summer. From a collecting perspective, I do have some stuff I want to work on for the summer as well, and that's kind of what I wanted to discuss in this one because it touches on a few different areas. Now, let me touch on one specifically first, because even though I haven't made a big deal out of it, I had originally the idea, and I've talked about it on the live stream on my YouTube channel a fair bit, that I had at least made the planning stages of it, and I had originally made a booking for a hotel reservation for Rosemont, New York, to set something up for the National. Now, I did that months and months and months ago because you wanted to make sure you did that well in advance, and it was one of those things that you needed to make sure you had that taken care of. Now, I've talked about in the past that I'm a little bit lukewarm about the whole National thing because honestly, it's never been something that's particularly interested me, and less so as the years have gone by. But this was going to be the year that I was going to put the pieces together and see if I could make it happen. And I knew that there were a lot of folks that I knew that I would know there and try to make some of that work and make that happen logistically. But it's one of those things where as time has gone on, it's become less and less likely as we went on. And fortunately for me, I did make it a reservation that could be canceled without penalty, and that's what I ended up doing. So I've canceled my reservation for the hotel. It is now open and free. So somewhere off in the distance, probably somebody will be able to get a hotel if they're checking closely in the wee hours, and we'll see. Hopefully somebody is able to get that and take advantage of it and enjoy themselves. And for the folks that are going to the National, wish you the best of luck. Hopefully it's a great show. And in the same vein also, I am going to look forward to a lot of the content, the vlogs and things that are going to come out of it, because that part I do enjoy. The going over there and being in this gigantic auditorium with all the pomp and circumstance of that particular show going on has not been super appealing to me, and it's one of those things where I'm going to be in the minority here. I'm not one of those people that says, oh, the National is a waste of time, waste of money, or whatever. No, that's not really. I believe that if it's something that you enjoy and something you get value out of, you should go and enjoy yourself and have a good time with it. And I think it's kind of what you make out of it. I just know that kind of where I'm sitting at, it's not something that appeals to me a lot. And as time goes on, it appeals to me even less and less. So I was always lukewarm on it, especially the last couple of years. And it was one of those things where I thought it might be interesting to check it out. And maybe it'll be in the cards sometime in the future when absolutely everything falls into place perfectly. But I'm not regretting the cancellation at all. It's one of those things where it's more of a relief for me than anything else. But again, I might be completely in the minority on this, but it's just the way that I feel about it. And I have to be honest about that. I can't BS and make something up. So I'm looking forward to not going to the National and doing some other things during that time period. So it's going to be a little bit fun for me, but I am enjoying some of the other things that I think I'm going to be doing for the rest of the summer. And a big part of that for me came from what I was working on the other night, which was I was starting to go through one of the boxes for one of the player collections that I do. So this episode is going to talk a little bit about, from the collecting side of things, some of the player collections that I'm working on, some of the differences with them, and also specifically what I was looking for as I was going through that box and what I'm working on now. Even as I'm chatting with you, I've got another one of those boxes here that I'm going to be going through afterwards in order to continue the sorting process. And after doing that, I also talked about it a little bit on the PSA Canada YouTube channel, where on the live stream we discussed the idea of going through elements of your collection, sorting through things to figure out what is working for you, what's not working for you, or if you want to refine some element of it, maybe you stop a project or you want to continue a project and you want to refine and focus, or you want to expand, and you have that openness to be able to kind of explore all the possibilities. So specifically, let me get into what I'm referring to here. The other night, I was actually going through one of the boxes for my Brett Favre collection. And one of the fun things about that particular collection is since I started it off later, even though I've been a fan of the Packers a while, I decided to make a concerted effort to start collecting some of the Favre cards only maybe a year ago-ish, give or take. And I was starting to put together a little bit of a collection, but I decided to take advantage of the fact that I wasn't bound by anything in particular. It contrasts a lot with my Mike Modano collection, where it's been a lot more expansive, and I'll do a little bit more contrasting about that in a minute. But since I was starting that collection from scratch, I decided to start off with a very narrow focus. And I actually made a video about that early on, and that's the initial checklist I started with. Then as time went on, I started to expand it a little bit for some different kind of 90s inserts that I really liked, and I found some that I really enjoyed. And I've also picked up some memorabilia and autographs. Autographs has been another category that I've started to add into it. And that's perfectly fine because, as I said, one of the main things that you can do over time is consistently look at and refine what you want. And this collection that I'm curating, and this is the proper word for it, it's curation. I wanted to build a collection of stuff that I thought looked a certain way that I wanted it to look, cards that I thought looked interesting, and that doesn't mean expensive, it doesn't mean cheap, it doesn't mean anywhere in between. It just means what fits into kind of what my eye is looking for as far as that collection is concerned. And that left me completely open to explore all these different avenues and find some mini projects inside of it. I actually found one of the Topps Finest refractor sets where I think the majority of the cards in that, the majority of the versions, including the gold refractor and some of the other ones, most of them are pretty attainable easily. So I was able to pick up a couple of those. And even though they're not in the collection or in the box yet, I wanted to go through the box to basically confirm what I had already, mark them all off a checklist, so to speak. And this is different from working on a want list because I didn't have any preconceived notion other than my initial list that I had created, what I was looking for. And now that I've expanded it out a little bit to be kind of whatever catches my eye, I don't necessarily need a want list unless I catch something like that insert, like that refractor set, and I want to see, okay, well, how many versions are there? One thing that I don't necessarily look for are one-of-ones because I've never felt like you need them necessarily. But if I see one that I like, well, then that's certainly something I can pursue. But what I looked at and what I saw was that most of them fit into certain categories. So I sorted the finest refractors in one side, the chrome refractors in another, some of the inserts and the 90s inserts and such in another pile, and then I had the memorabilia and the autograph cards in another pile, and I started to sort through all the different little categories and see, okay, so out of what's here, what stuff am I interested in? Well, as it turned out, as I went through it all and I was able to chronicle and document everything, I found out that the collection right now sits at 43 cards, including a couple of base cards that were thrown in, which I've thrown in that box as well, because that's fine. It's perfectly good. So overall, the collection is under 50 cards. Now, part of the impetus for going through it is because right now in the next Ship My Cards mail day that I'm going to have, it's actually going to be a really cool one because it's going to hit on a lot of different, it's going to hit on my player collections and some of the projects that I'm working on. And it's going to be a really fun one because there's a lot of really cool stuff in it. And there's actually going to be, I think, I want to say maybe about a dozen Favre cards that are going to get added to this. So I'm going to be over 50 cards after that's done. So I wanted to double check and make sure that there wasn't some stuff that was redundant, some stuff that maybe I wasn't as interested in hanging on to. And that's the point that I'm making with this curation piece, is that I wanted to go through it and make sure that these were the cards that I wanted to have in this collection, especially since I was being a lot more picky about what I was choosing to have in here. Now contrast that with the Modano collection that has been more expansive. I started that almost 30 years ago. So the reality of it is that that collection started from the idea of trying to get my hands on everything. I have plateaued a little bit in terms of what I pick up for that. That doesn't mean that I'm not picking up more things. I am. But I'm certainly being a lot pickier with the newer stuff I'm adding in. As new products come in, maybe I chase after some of those cards. I am adding more autographs. That's a big one that I've been looking and targeting. So that's the way that I kind of narrow that. But I almost have 2,500 cards in that collection. Jamie Benn is another collection that I have where I have somewhere in the range of about 300 cards and change. And I've had some collections I've done in the past, PC player collections, that are probably in that 200 to 300 card range. And I'll still add some cards here and there to them, but in the same vein, I'm a lot pickier. So a lot of these collections have become pickier as time has gone on. And that's one of those things where I want to be more selective because it allows me to really put my focus in. But another aspect of it that I added into it, as I said, I've added potentially about a dozen more cards that are going to be coming in as part of this. But they're going to fit these little themes, and they fit in neatly into some of these buckets that I'm looking at, including the autographs and memorabilia and some of these refractors. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun because once those come in, I'm going to enjoy putting together another little showcase video to show off kind of where things sit, because I love those progress videos as time goes on. But I think the Favre collection right now is in a really good spot in the sense that right now I'm adding pieces, because I feel like all the pieces that I've added in were intentional. I was very particular about, yes, this is one that I really want to add into this. So something that I'll enjoy, so that right now I feel like it's very lean from the perspective of I've got basically no filler. Even though, like I said, I have a handful of base cards in, they were included as part of, other mail days and stuff. So I have no problem just leaving them there. They may eventually go into a Z folio. And that's similar to what I've done with my Juan Soto PC, where there's stuff that's in the Z folio, that's all kinds of items. And then there's stuff that sits in the box, which is autographs, inserts, parallels, all kinds of those things that might be a little bit more interesting to me that I want to have over there instead. But speaking of that, that also brings me to that Soto collection, because that one is a really good example of the opposite. So as the Favre one is already pretty lean, it kind of sits that the advantage of going through it was that I was able to confirm what I suspected. I thought I had already been intentional enough about it that I didn't really need to cull the herd at all. With the Soto collection, I am going to be in the process of culling. That doesn't mean I'm going to get rid of everything, because actually, on the contrary, I've got some cards that I'm actually very happy with. And I added one at a recent card show that I went into, and I'll give you that story of how that plays into this discussion that I'm having. But what I'm going to do as I go through that box is I want to start going through a lot of the different categories that I picked up. The same exercise, but with Soto, there's more cards to go through. So now what I want to do is I want to figure out which one of these fits into kind of the way I want this collection to look. I never wanted the Soto collection to be hundreds and hundreds or thousands of cards. No interest in doing that. Simply don't have the budget for it, and also, frankly, don't have the interest in dealing with the sorting problem. But what I did want to do as time went on is I saw different cards that I thought were interesting. I wanted to explore these different aspects, similar to what I did with the Favre, but the Favre I started later, so I was able to learn from lessons that I had done with some of these more curated collections. But with the Soto, it's kind of in the middle. It has some nice pieces that I've already added that I'm very happy with that are going to stick with where I'm currently at on that one. But I've also got some other stuff that is superfluous, a little bit of extra. Because one example, the category that I picked up quite a number of was a lot of the Prism Golds, Prism and Select Golds. Well, to be honest, I actually do really like those Prism Select Golds, but I don't necessarily need all of them. There's only so many that I think I'm going to be hanging on to. That doesn't mean I'm going to fire sale them away, because that might not make any sense for me. But it means that I'm at least open to moving some of those ones and looking at some of these other things and going, which one of these fits into the way I want this collection to look, a more streamlined version of this collection. One good example, though, that did play into that card show is that last weekend I went over to a card show that was over in a neighboring area, and it was a lot of fun. It was a smaller show, and I only hung out there for a couple of hours, and I had a pretty good use of time there because since I went in with no preconceived notions, I was open to just seeing what was there. And when I started looking around, I found that there were a number of different things that I thought were interesting, but I only ended up making 2 transactions. And one of them was to go into a bargain box. I skimmed through it for about 10 or 15 minutes, found a couple of cards that were actually, I thought, worth flipping. So this is a situation where I looked at the cards that were there, and outside of one that was kind of a gag gift that I thought would be kind of fun to pick up for mostly my enjoyment, the other 3 cards I was thinking, if I can get these for the right price, I can probably find somewhere else that somebody might want them and then be able to make a couple of dollars on this. And that'll kind of subsidize the rest of what I wanted to do in the show. I brought a couple $100s to the show, so I thought, okay, I'm not going to go crazy spending, but I ended up making a pretty good deal on the cards themselves. And within a day, I had already sold one of the cards and made more than enough money to cover all the cards that I had purchased in that lot and already subsidized some stuff from my second purchase. And that plays into the Juan Soto thing, because I went to a different table. I was chatting with a couple different folks. The conversations were honestly most of the enjoyment of that particular show. But as I said, it was nice to look through the cards, and it was kind of nice to see in a smaller show environment, be able to kind of scan around and take my time. But in the course of the conversation, on the showcase was one of the Juan Soto cards that I kind of caught my eye. And what I liked about it was that it was a nice on-card autograph. It was one of those Gypsy Queen cards, on-card autograph. Nice design, I liked it. And because it was an on-card auto, I thought it stood out a little bit. So we went back and forth, came to a number that we were happy with. I got a card tossed in to make the deal, to sweeten the deal just a little bit. We were able to get it done. And between, like I said, the profit from the other card sale and then a couple of cards that I'm sitting on, I basically covered the entire other lot, as I mentioned, but then also a chunk of this card. And my intention when I actually came to this deal was that I was going to go home and list a couple of cards that I had sitting in the box, similar to what I'm going to be doing anyway as part of this exercise. And then I was going to use the proceeds to completely cover it. Well, as it turned out, I did well enough on selling that one card, plus a couple of other ones that sold right at that time, that I basically was able to take a certain amount out of the bank account and put all the money back in and walk away with a card for the PC, which is fantastic. So in that vein of kind of what I'm talking about is that card represents the idea that I'm trying to replace some of the cards here with some on-card autographs, including some sticker autographs that I've got. Now, there are a few where the sticker auto is fine because it plays well in the design and I really like the card. Those ones are going to stay right where they are. But the ones where maybe the design is a little bit lackluster, or a case where like, hey, I picked up the card because I felt it was a good deal, but in reality it's just a design and you slap a sticker on it, those ones I'm more inclined to let go of. And That's going to allow me to then use those proceeds, recycle them, and then be able to pick and choose some other pieces, some other on-card autographs or memorabilia or whatever the case may be, that'll fit a little bit better into that collection that I'm trying to curate. Same idea, but in this case, I already have an excess number of cards, and what I'm trying to do and I'm looking to do is to move on some of those out in order to make space for some of the ones that I want to potentially add. The idea here being that I'm taking advantage of the selectivity to allow me to have a little bit more focus in it and build a collection that's going to make more sense for me going forward, that I'll be able to go through, leaf through. Like I said, the Z Folio is there with a bunch of different stuff. Those ones are going to stay because those ones are just fun for me. And I'll definitely find more cards down the road to add to that Z Folio, but that one's kind of the open caveat. The stuff in the Z Folio, for the most part, isn't even sorted that much. I do have some parallels and things that I have sorted for sure, but there's a bunch of other stuff that's just randomly sorted in there. It's just kind of fun to leaf through. I did it the other day, and it was a lot of fun. But the stuff that sits in the boxes, I want to be a little bit more intentional about what I have in those ones. So that's kind of what's been on my mind, and my plan is to go through a bunch of my other player PCs and try to find more and more opportunities to do that kind of thing. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to, because it's just a matter of streamlining. It's the idea is I've already got a bunch of these cards that some of which have been sitting for a long time and I'm not really looking at them anymore. I want to be able to take advantage of that and turn those and convert them into other cards that I'm going to be able to enjoy. And that's why I say, even as some cards are going out, I've got a group that's coming in that's going to fit the kind of the theme that I'm going for a lot better. And that's kind of fun. And I think that's going to be really good in terms of what I'm looking for. Aside from the player collections, another piece that I'm working on is some of my set projects, and I've been making some progress on those, and I'd like to make a little bit more progress. So that's where the proceeds are going to help there too, because I'll be able to focus a little bit more on picking off some more of those set projects. The 63 Fleer Baseball is going to be a good one that I want to keep chipping away at. That's a good one. And the 53 Bowman Color Baseball set. And that's one that I grabbed a couple of cards for not that long ago, but I want to grab another little group of them and slowly keep chipping away at it. I'm about a third of the way through that set, so I'm definitely making some progress. I'd love to be like halfway through the set or 3/4 done through the set, maybe towards the latter portion of the year or into next year. And then maybe next year we should be able to finish that one off, and that'll be another big one off the checklist and move on to some of the other big vintage projects I'm working on. Now, kind of a final thought, playing into where my collecting is sitting right now, in the same vein, is that I'm still looking further down. Like, I'm not looking past the 53 Bowman color set or the 63 Fleer set, but what I'm looking for is I like to look down the roadmap a little bit and kind of keep in the back of my mind where things are going. And again, this is the same idea. It's the reevaluation process. And maybe you do a similar thing yourself. I don't know. It's something I like to do from time to time because I feel like it's a good way of making sure that I'm not using my time and resources in the way that doesn't get me the collection that I'm looking to try to build. I'm not interested in having a million cards. That's never been my thing. But I'd like to have a collection that I could go through at any time, see certain cards, and no matter what I'm looking at, I get some enjoyment out of it. And that's really the goal that I'm trying to achieve out of this. There's a bunch of cards that are kind of sitting in these boxes that I don't even look at anymore because, frankly, they're either abandoned projects or the things that I really don't want to go back to. And if it doesn't make sense and I don't want to go back to it, then it doesn't make sense for me to hang on to it forever. So it's just figuring out where those things need to go. And that's what going through those boxes and doing this thought exercise, that's what it's for, really, above all else. Same vein, having that roadmap helps me kind of understand that I scratched off so many things that were kind of midway through because I knew that I wasn't ever going to come back and finish them. But looking forward in the roadmap, past the 53 Bowman Color, past the 63 Fleer baseball set, I know that down the road, the other big project that I have ahead of me is the 53 Topps baseball set. I've got a chunk of those cards, and I'd like to finish that set and then have those two 53 sets. And then after that, it gets really interesting. I've got some other stuff in the back of my mind. I know where I think I want to go with this after that, but it's going to get real interesting. But I do see what's interesting in the same vein, and maybe I'll make this a topic of a different episode. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel where I'll run out of certain set projects, and after that, I might not start anymore. I've already got enough of a roadmap, though, to keep me busy for years, so it's not like that's going to happen anytime soon. But it is interesting to be able to kind of look ahead and see that there's going to be a point at which the set projects will probably end. And then more than likely, a lot of these player projects will just continue indefinitely because they always make more stuff. And that's kind of where I'm sitting at as far as my collecting right now. I've mentioned it a lot in the live stream when I talk about it. I've never had more fun working through a lot of this stuff than before. Like, it doesn't bother me that I bought a lot of this other stuff that I'm not using now. It was part of the path to getting to where I am right now, because you have to go down and explore those paths in order to figure out that they either make sense for you or that they don't. There have been certain constants in my collecting the whole time, because once I figured that one out, that lane made sense to me. So that's why it's still here, and that's why we keep going down that path. but I can still refine, I can still adjust. Even in those player collections, as I said, I'm still collecting those players, but I'm doing so in a more intentional way that gets me a collection that's going to make more sense for me. Somebody else just wants to have as many cards as possible. Somebody else just wants to have the highest end set, the most expensive set, one of ones all over the place. Maybe that's what they want to do. And I think if that's what works for them, that's fantastic. What has always worked for me is just finding that balance of the cards that I get enjoyment out of and the ones that I find challenging enough to keep things interesting. And that is where I kind of feel like I'm sitting at right now. And I've really enjoyed that. And I feel like it's been really good for me to keep going down that path and sort through these boxes and figure that out. And I'm looking forward to going through these now and finding what needs to basically stick around and what needs to get out of here. And once I've made that decision, then looking forward to the new opportunities that presents. So just wanted to kind of talk that out a little bit. I'm going to finish this one off here, and then I'm going to get back over to sorting in that other box. We'll see what comes of that, and then start sorting through some of these other ones. So now we are in the summertime. It is the warm weather season. Also going to try to enjoy a little bit of that as well. But I'm curious if you are listening in on this. I'm curious if you kind of do a similar exercise yourself. Do you ever take any time to reflect through some of the collections, whatever projects you're working on, be it sets, be it players, be it whatever teams, or whatever the case may be for you? Is it a situation where you just keep accumulating, or is it something where from time to time you go looking through to figure out, does this still make sense for me? Because that's basically all I was talking about during the majority of this. It's the current process of going through this and figuring out what makes sense now and what doesn't. Because in some of these, I've accumulated now more than what I actually need or want. And in doing that, I suppose in a good way, is that it does allow me to have some chips on the table to be able to convert them into something else that'll probably make a lot more sense with the vision that I have for it. And I'm always open to that vision changing over time, but I'm basically settled in as time goes on. I've been able to kind of explore enough of these avenues that I now have a much better understanding of what I would like it to look like, as opposed to when I started the whole journey in the first place. Because at the beginning, you really don't know necessarily where things are going to go. And I do think there is some value to leaving yourself open to that possibility and being able to be adaptable to changing things up as you see fit. So anyway, that's it for me for now. If you're listening to the audio version, if you could leave a review, that would be awesome and much appreciated. If you're checking out on the YouTube version, you're going to get a lot of the links and things to the social medias and all that. You'll also have a spot there to do the comments. And because, as I said, I'm kind of curious if you conduct a similar exercise with yourself or something in the same vein. But you can also check out the YouTube side of things, which is the hub for a lot of my different content, including videos and live streams. So I do a lot of that and also house these episodes of the podcast version. But if you are on the YouTube version of it, as I said, you can leave a comment there, you can like, you can subscribe. That's always appreciated, the support. With that said, thanks very much, and we'll catch you in the next one.